Hi, I'm Gillian Edgar on the SPU rowing team.
Well, Gillian, some good news recently. You were selected to the Under-23 selection camp, which trains for the U23 National Team. First off, how did you find out about that?
So we started the process back in December. There are 6 ID camps around the country. One of them is at UW. And so the coaches and I decided I'd just go over and see what I could do. So there are a couple tests we did over there. And then they put all the results from all the camps or ID camps around the country together, and I placed fairly high in it, and yeah, so they just select based off of that.
Was that intimidating at all? University of Washington is obviously a national championship caliber program, and they've won titles. To go over there and in that group and at the ID camp, what was that process like?
Not gonna lie, I was a little freaked out. I went over there. I was the only one from SPU who went, so I went over by myself. I kind of hung out with the Oregon State girls a little bit, but basically we just went into their huge erg room and warmed up and did the tests and then went out on the water, so it was kind of structured. It wasn't too intimidating when I got there.
Now, you talk about the erg. People familiar with rowing are familiar with the erg, but tell us a little bit about that apparatus
So the erg is basically a tool to train indoors, so it's like rowing indoors. It's a little bit more simple. You don't have to have boat feel and blend with anybody else, so you're just pulling numbers.
How does a higher tech erg differ from, say, a rowing machine someone may have in their home?
Yeah, so what most teams use is we use Concept 2, which is, I guess it's just designed for rowing, and it just copies the feel of the boat a little bit better. And what we have down the shell house right now are we have these metal things we call slides that we put the ergs on, and they move back and forth, which you can also connect together and makes it even feel more like a boat. But at home, people might have just a chain and a seat, and it just doesn't feel quite the same.
With the erg scores or times, it enables people to compare kind of a baseline. Is that when you go to a thing like UW, maybe you know where you stand in things? Does that help you know that you certainly belong in a place like that?
Yeah, going into it, I had no idea what everyone else was going to pull. We did a test for power just to see, like, in 10 strokes how much power you can put out, and then we had a 30-minute test just to see your endurance, and I tend to do better on the endurance ones, but I had no idea what everyone else was going to be pulling going into there, but I think I ended up, like, in the middle of the pack, 6 or 7.
What have you been told that this selection camp, what's going to happen there? How will that work?
I'm not too familiar, so what I believe it is this: I counted there are like 29 of the top college female rowers in the country, and we're all thrown into this boathouse, and we have a certain amount of time, and it's not a camp to get better, it's just to see who's the fastest. So they're going to select an 8, 2 4s, and a pair to compete at the World Championships. So I don't know how many spots that is. That's like 18 spots up for grabs out of 29, so we'll see what happens.
Great. You are the only Division II rower in that group. I guess it'll be similar to the ID where you're... But how do you imagine that dynamic to be going in a place where you really won't know too many people?
I mean, I like to go into situations with worst case scenario, so I'm imagining that it's going to be pretty individualized and cutthroat because everyone's fighting for seats, and I know I'm not going to be one of the top people there, but I'm planning on just going in and doing my thing and hopefully making friends, but yeah.
And great experience whether you get selected or not, because this is something that could happen down the road, continue happening. Is that an approach, is that a fair?
Yeah, exactly. So the U23 is everyone under 23 in the country, so I have this year and next year, so I'm looking at this year as a way to prepare for next year's camp and hopefully be selected and be more competitive.
Great. Well, we've talked a little about you yourself, but your crew, the Varsity 8, in fact the entire team, has really had a tremendous year so far. What have you felt about this year, your progress so far, and just how has it been different than last year?
I think this year we've really emphasized the team dynamic. So obviously rowing's a team sport, and everything you do affects everybody else. Everything you do, you're responsible for everybody else. It's not individual at all. So I think we have a great team dynamic going, and everyone's very bought in and committed to taking really good strokes every single time and being purposeful with what they do.
You mentioned as a team sport, along with your Varsity 8, the NCAA selection also factors in a Varsity 4.
Yeah.
Your 4 has improved drastically this year. Just talk about them a little bit.
They are a great group of girls. I think it was probably really hard for the coaches to decide the varsity four. We have a super deep roster. The 4 girls who are in it right now, though, they swing really well together. So what we talk about is you can have 8 people making the boat move this fast, but when people get a really good swing going, it's almost like there are 9 people, like there's an extra person. So when they're 4, it seems like there's almost 5 people. They just swing really well, and it's beautiful to watch.
Great. Going back to you, really you've had a meteoric rise, so to speak, in rowing, because you're fairly new to it. Tell us a little about your rowing journey.
Let's see, I started last fall, and I just walked into the shell house, and I pulled on the erg as hard as I could, and it was painful to watch. I'm sure it was really sloppy. So I got the numbers pretty quickly right off the bat, and I've just been working on refining my technique and trying to help the boat be smoother rather than being a detriment.
Was there a point for you last year where it clicked, where you felt, boy, I'm a rower now. I'm doing this. I know what I'm doing. Is there a point you recall where that happened?
Well, I remember thinking until spring break last year, like, this is the stupidest sport ever. I'm just moving a piece of carbon fiber with a stick. But it got a little bit more fun, and I think it didn't click until this year on how to actually move the boat well, but I think I'm still learning how to do that.
And lastly, people who've never been in a shell, never rowed, don't get the feeling, the sensation, but it's noticeable when when you've added speed during the course of a year. How is that sensation like? Can you describe that a little bit, or how like, say, difference between last year and this year that you've got a little more speed?
We talk about it as easy to work hard. So I remember the beginning of the year last year, like, I was pulling just as hard, but it just hurts. And when you end up getting that flow going, like, obviously we're not perfect, but it's better, and it's just easier to take good strokes, place your blade correctly, and pull hard, but not painfully. Yeah.
Gillian, thanks so much for your time, and good luck the rest of the collegiate season and also at the camp.
Thank you.